To finalize the hardware we need to create the firmware. For this purpose we are using the Arduino IDE. As an alternative, if you want to handle everything in the cloud you can use CodeBender. The code we need to write has to do a fairly simple logic. Monitor the motion sensor, and whenever there is a change in state, and motion is detected, then a signal is sent to the wiring cloud. If you want to learn more about how the coding is done for Arduino platform, I encourage you to go to the Arduino website, www.arduino.cc. Arduino code has to implement two very important functions. The first one is setup. The role for this function is to put in it all the code that is required to initialize the hardware properly. This function is executed only once. The second function is loop. This is the main function and it is executed in an infinite loop. This is where you put the code that will implement the main functionality of the hardware. Let's start coding. The first thing we do is to add a set of variables that will be used in the code. We need to set a MAC address. It is important to pick a value that you do not have in your network already. Newer Ethernet shields come with a hard-coded value, but for the board I used I have to provide a MAC address from the code. We have to create a variable for the Ethernet client that I am going to use to communicate with the wiring cloud. Next step is to provide the host name for the wiring cloud. Also, a device ID has to be created. Make sure you use a GUID. We have a link on the website where you can go to generate such an ID. A variable is created to match the pin where the signal from the motion sensor is connected. Next step is to initialize the system. For this you have to set up the serial communication. This is used only for debug. We also have to set up the pin used to communicate with the motion sensor. The last thing required in the setup phase is to start the Ethernet library. To communicate with the wiring cloud we have to create a function that will make the API call to submit the motion detected event. The function is fairly simple. A connection is established with the wiring cloud and an HTTP request is sent to the server. You can see the code on the screen. The request is sent only when motion is detected. Now let's go to the main function. The logic we have to create is simple. We have to read the motion sensor, and if the state reported by it changes, then make a call to send the event to the wiring cloud. Once this is done we have to compile and upload the code to the Arduino board. You can find instructions on the Arduino website how to set up your environment, compile and upload. You need to make sure your IDE is properly set to use Arduino Uno as a target, and proper serial port for communication with the Arduino board. Once again, instructions how to do these can be found on the Arduino documentation. At this point your hardware is ready, and it is communicating with the wiring cloud. To test if your signal reaches the server, you can use the Signal Viewer tool on the IC2Cloud website. You can read or reset the signal with this tool. If your signal reaches the wiring cloud then your hardware is up and running.